Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and this is a cold steel and work knife video. So, cold steel knives. I've recommended them for a very long time that they are the heavy hitters when it comes to the best work knife. Their locking mechanism is beyond strong. Like there's barely any other contenders, put it that way, when it comes to lock strength. Arguably no contenders, because if we talk about the shark lock, hard to get, and now you're talking about a price category of which most people can't afford, and most people are not going to actually do work with. Now, the big argument is, what kind of work are we talking about? I'm mostly talking about for construction and that type of labor work. I did construction my whole life. So, and I'm not saying that a cold steel knife is going to be your best option, because I understand, like, I've been in so many situations working construction where I needed a knife that was fast. I needed a knife that I could open up and close one-handed very easily. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that with this. It's just, it's a little bit slower. We'll talk about that in a second. But being able to, say, pin something against the wall or the floor, or maybe you're up on a ladder or rope, whatever, and pull your knife out, bang, get it open, make your cut, get it back in the pocket, right? Or out of the way. Now, I understand that, and I also understand there are some jobs that actually require smaller knives than this. Like, I remember I carried a KERSHAW LEEK for a while, and that gave me so much respect for the KERSHAW LEEK. It is a small knife, but a beast of a knife. It is a very small knife, but holy cow, does it cut. And the benefits of it was the utility cutting performances. Now, this Recon one is in CTS XHP. Steel, has a diamond, DLC coating on it, G10 scales, and it has the triad lock. Now, the triad lock might not be the fidgety knife of all knives, but it's still doable, because they leave you a little spot right there for, not on all of them, but on a lot of cold steels, they leave a spot right there for you to be able to push the back lock and let it hit your finger, then close it. And you can slow roll it open. And if you have low room, you can, thumb flick it open. But most of them, not all of them, but they're all kind of specifically made for certain jobs. Some of them are made for work, some of them are made for self-defense, some of them are made for this, that, whatever. But there's all different sizes, all different builds of cold steel knives. But knives like the Recon one, this knife is an absolute workhorse. And I know, like, the Code 4 isn't necessarily made for work or construction, especially with its slick aluminum handles, but that's another great option too. The American Lawman, so many options. But a knife like this, the Recon one, especially with the drop point blade, the last Recon one I tried had the clip point blade. Now, I wouldn't recommend that necessarily for working, for camping, farming, things like that. Yes, absolutely. But specifically towards hard work labor, this drop point blade, oh man, you can get so much leverage in this grip, and then if you really need to do close push cuts, you can lock your middle finger into the finger choil and cover the tang of the blade right here and really get, bear down. Now, like I said, though, this, in many cases, is going to be a little obnoxious, a little big. It just kind of depends on your type of work, your line of work. There's so many different forms of construction. Now, I also would recommend, even, depending on what you do, something like the DELICA, man. The DELICA, especially if you get aftermarket scales, because the DELICA is a little tiny slicer, and this thing is a little workhorse itself, but it's also a backlock. Same thing. This one, I would argue, is a little bit more easier to fidget with. you know, to get out and pow, get it open, make your cut, get it back in the pocket. It is nice and fast. This one has aftermarket copper scales, which I actually like. It puts a little weight on it. And this one is in 20 CV. They do have many different options, and that's another thing. You can kind of get your steel for your job. Now, other knives, you know, like I busted out the SPYDERCO PM2, another great option. The tip might be a little fragile for you, but in a lot of cases, that fine tip is actually what you want. So, like knives like the SPYDERCO MANIX, that's another fantastic option. Extremely strong lock. Great ergos. It's not too big, not too small. It's a perfect size. You can get a lot of leverage. Great cutting performance with this full flat grind. So you can really get some good slicing. Even in the reverse grip, it works. It's just a very functional blade and knife. And it's very, very tough. And another thing, you can get these in many different steels as well, which is a great benefit when you're looking for the knife for you, for the task you do. You know, you might specifically cut certain things every day, like say certain plastics, right? Well, then there are steels from plastic industries like M390, 20 CV. Those steels are actually made for the plastic industry. Then there's people that cut rope most of the time, or possibly, you know, whatever, right? There's so many different things. SPYDERCO Shaman. Now we're getting up in price though, so I would love to recommend the SPYDERCO Shaman, but I understand that, you know, depending on your budget, depending on where you work, lots of different things, you might want more of a disposable knife. Something that if it gets stolen off the job site, left on the job site, something like that, you're not going to, you know, be out too much. You can replace it, yada, yada. And the Shaman is a bit expensive, but if you're not worried about those things and you're really good with your tools and you're not worried about losing them or anything like that, the SPYDERCO Shaman is another great option, a great hard use knife. But if you are more worried about it, a Civivi knives are really, really good. They're not necessarily hard use, but they are awesome, reliable tools. They're great cutters. And that is another thing. The geometry, the heat treat, the ease of sharpening, all those things come into play, you know, so you can maintain it very easily, and you're not out much money if you lose it or it gets stolen or it breaks. Now, the lock is not going to be nowhere near as strong as the ones I've already shown. However, sometimes that doesn't even matter. You know, like I kind of said, you know, I was working with a KERSHAW LEEK that held up great, and that's a little liner lock, so. But if you are wanting something a little bit more durable, more, let's say, frame locky, you know, like a frame lock type knife, and you're wanting something maybe with better materials, etc., but maybe something you're not going to cry about too much, TWOSUN. Some of TWOSUN's knives, like this one, is an absolute hard use knife. This thing is rock solid, and it's very easy to deploy, very fidgety. I get amazing ergos. I have no problems doing light duty prying with this thing. And that's another thing, you know, you do want to know your geometry and what you want, because the difference between a knife that slices really good and cuts straps, ropes, maybe, you know, whatever you're going to be cutting in the daytime, you know, you might want more cutting performance than hard use. But if you are looking for some hard use, this TWOSUN TS380 is a great option. You can absolutely, you know, like I said, do some light duty prying while also doing some heavy cutting, because it's still going to have pretty good cutting performance while also being hard use. It has a little bit of the best of both worlds. Now, if you're wanting a hard use cutter, the 223. The 223 is a great option. You can get it in, well, as of right now, you can get this one in 14C28M, which is a tough steel, great steel. This one, I think, only comes in M390 now, but same thing, amazing ergos, and this one cuts extremely well. More slicing geometry than hard use geometry, so you're not going to want to hard use this thing with prying and things like that, but for slicing, cutting, utility use, things like that, and see this little section right there, you can really get it into your hand for pushing down and doing utility cuts. And the action also is really good, and it's a tough knife. Benchmade knives. Benchmade knives are another great option. They have a fantastic, amazing warranty. If you snap the blade, you can buy a replacement blade for like 20 to 40 bucks, depending on the steel. But they have an amazing warranty that covers pretty much everything. And you can get a lot of aftermarket parts. So they are a little bit expensive, but considering the warranty, USA made, it can be an option. It just depends, I guess, on your budget and everything. But the Benchmade BUGOUT, this one's more light duty, lightweight, but it's a lot more reasonable for a lot more people, and it still is a very tough knife considering the cutting geometry, the lock strength, and everything else. And these knives are very fast deployment, very fast back in the pocket type knives. They're very fidgety. Next, we can talk about the Benchmade Adamas. I have this one in for sharpening. Same thing with the cold steel. Thank you guys for using my sharpening service. But the Benchmade Adamas, another great option. This is an extremely tough knife. And then this is the mini, and still a full-size knife. So you're getting hard use geometry with an extremely tough lock that's extremely smooth. So, you have fast deployment, very tough, and, fast closing action while being able to have an amazing warranty. Now, some people would argue that you have a chance of the Omega springs breaking. They will replace them for no charge, but you can also buy them for like $6 a piece off of Etsy and replace them yourself. So it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, the Benchmade is another fantastic option for a work knife, and they come in multiple different versions, so they do have different price categories to help fit, a budget if you are worried about the price. Now, everything always depends on your case, but when we boil back down to cold steel knives, if you are needing a hard-hitting knife, something that you can replace, you're not going to be out too much money, right? And I know, money is different for everybody. So some people might look at this and say, that is way too much money for me to use, as a knife on the job. But, when we look at other things like your hammer, you're going to want the best hammer. You're not going to want to, save a few dollars on, you're going to want something like an East Wing, right? When you're dealing with your saws, you're going to want something reliable. You're not going to want your run-of-the-mill Sawzall or skill saw or anything like that. You're going to probably want a Milwaukee or something. So, same thing with the knife in your pocket, and in this case, cold steel, solid choice while not breaking the bank too much. And they have a lot of different options. This cold steel Recon one is a great option for a big knife. And, it is a big knife, though. This is not a small knife. This thing is a hard use knife. So, you are getting that. But you're still going to be able to get good cutting performance. And because of the DLC coating, you're not going to have to worry about corrosion. Yes, it will scratch up a little bit, but it is the most durable coating you can get on a knife. So, there are a lot of other factors, and you always want to think about that. Am I dealing with corrosive things, right? If I'm dealing with corrosive things, you want more of a stainless steel or a coated blade, one of the two. Am I going to be doing stupid things like light-duty prying and things like that, things that construction workers do? Well, then you might want more of a tougher steel and or a little tiny bit thicker geometry, right? Not obscene, but, you have a kind of a balance there between tough steel or geometry. The thicker the geometry, the tougher the blade will be. The tougher the steel, obviously the tougher the steel. So you might be able to go a little thinner if you increase the steel performance by getting a good quality steel. Like 3V. 3V is an extremely tough steel. However, it's not very corrosive or corrosion resistant, so you're probably going to want to get it coated. Then the next thing, do you want fast deployment? Do you care? Do you get into situations where you are going to need to use your knife one-handed or not? Right? That's going to be different depending on your job site and the people around and everything else, and how crazy your job sites get. I know how crazy mine used to get. So, And then another thing, the size, you know, and whether or not you were wanting cutting performance or, like I said before, a little bit harder use stuff. So, but cold steel, if you are wanting a hard hitter, right, the hard hitter, the beast of all beasts, cold steel is the way to go. Best construction knife, best farming knife, best camping knife for a folder, you know, if you're not going to use a fixed blade. Best, you know, just toughest knife. So, but, however, like I said, a lot of other options. Just depends on the variables. A lot of people don't like backlocks. A lot of people don't like backlocks because it's not the funnest to fidget with, but mostly, you know, it can be a little slow. However, you know, when you get used to it, it's fast. It's not slow at all. Once you get it down pat, you can crank this thing out pretty easily. It's just sometimes when you're in certain situations, you don't want to have to maneuver your knife too many ways. You want to possibly be able to just pull it out of the pocket, get it in the action, right? Because I've been in situations where my knife saved my life because I got it out in, you know, fast. So it always is in the back of my mind because of that situation that I was in and multiple other situations. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you like the content, please follow the channel. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. I love you guys. Peace.